You're currently standing in front of Roseburg City Hall. Half a block east, set back from the street, is the Douglas County Courthouse. After Central Junior High School, the courthouse suffered the most damage of any of Roseburg's public buildings. Constructed in 1929, the courthouse was exposed to shock from the explosion primarily on the south and west sides. The library suffered broken glass throughout, and interior walls were warped by the blast. Books were scattered everywhere, and each had to be checked for glass splinters before they could be loaned out. The third floor of the courthouse was the most seriously damaged, with shattered ceilings and plaster, as well as doors and windows that were destroyed by the impact, leaving one courtroom in shambles. Despite the destruction, the building was cleaned up, and with the exception of the library, it was open to the public almost immediately. The previous City Hall, which also housed the city police and fire stations, was located about 3 blocks south of the current site and suffered mostly broken windows. While state and federal officials, including Oregon's Governor Mark Hatfield, had flocked to the area in the aftermath of the blast, promising financial help to the wounded city, Roseburg would be denied federal disaster aid. The Small Business Administration did set up a temporary office inside the courthouse so that local business owners could apply for disaster loans. Fortunately, 98% of the businesses within the blast zone were insured against both the explosion and resulting fires and weren't dependent on outside funding for repairs and rebuilding. In the months that followed the disaster, the city looked at a number of options to redevelop the 8-block area that had been devastated by the explosion, including a master plan created by Richard Neutra, a famous architect. Unfortunately, the city failed to qualify for federal urban renewal funds and was forced to simplify their plans. A new bridge would replace the aging Oak Street span across the South Umpqua River, and another bridge was added 1 block north, connecting Washington Avenue to the west side of town. In addition, 2 downtown streets were altered to accommodate increased traffic in and out of Roseburg from the south. The Interstate Commerce Commission launched an immediate investigation into the cause of the blast. By December, in a report issued by the ICC, they found that both truck driver George Rutherford and the Pacific Powder Company were at fault for parking their truck in a congested area and leaving it unattended, despite being warned about leaving their truck under those exact conditions just 2 days prior to the accident. Rutherford claimed that he had received permission to park in front of Garretson's from someone who worked there, although that person was never identified. A number of civil actions were filed in Douglas County courts, and in March of 1962, close to $1.2 million was awarded to victims of the blast. Pacific Powder Company was also indicted for involuntary manslaughter, but a judge later ruled that the statute did not apply to corporations. Rutherford, the truck driver, was never indicted. And since privately contracted deliveries of explosives did not fall under the same transportation laws as common carriers, Rutherford and Pacific Powder were found innocent of all criminal charges. The Roseburg blast would have a major effect on local, state, and federal regulations governing the transportation of hazardous materials. In fact, many of the regulations within the blasting industry today are a result of lessons learned in the Roseburg disaster. The single biggest change mandated that vehicles carrying explosives could not be left unattended, something that seems like common sense in a post-9/11 world. In fact, the lethal combination of fertilizer and explosives that caused the Roseburg blast of 1959 was very similar to a loaded truck left by Timothy McVeigh in front of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building in Oklahoma City in April of 1995, killing 168 people. Unlike the Oklahoma City tragedy, the Roseburg blast was an accident, an unlikely combination of unique circumstances, wrong place, wrong time. And while there would be a period of mourning for those who lost their homes, their businesses, and for the 14 people who lost their lives, there would also be hope as the city rebuilt itself, new buildings, new stores, new opportunities to make Roseburg better than before.